The mop hit the floor with a wet slap.
Hey,
Daniel
you wanna
Carter,
go out and get
CEO of
something
Carter
to eat?
Industries, watched from behind his janitor's cart
Yes,
as his
I
wife
would
Rebecca
love
walked past him in the hallway. She didn't even glance his way. But the man beside her, he had his hand on her lower back. Too familiar, too comfortable. Daniel squeezed the mop handle until his knuckles turned white. "Don't worry about the mess," Rebecca told the man, laughing. "The cleaners will handle it. They're paid to be invisible." The man she was with was James Morrison, Daniel's best friend, his business partner, the man he trusted with everything. Daniel stood frozen as they disappeared into Rebecca's office. The door clicked shut behind them. 3 weeks ago, Daniel would have laughed if someone told him this would happen. But strange things had been happening at Carter Industries. Money missing from accounts, confidential files leaked to competitors, his wife coming home later and later each night. So he decided to find out the truth the only way he could, by becoming invisible. Now, dressed in a blue maintenance uniform with a fake mustache and glasses, Daniel Carter was about to discover that some truths destroy everything. Before we continue with this explosive story, I'd love to remind you to subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit that like button. Share this video with your friends and family so they can experience this incredible story. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Now, let's get back to the story. 6 months earlier, everything seemed perfect. Daniel Carter sat in his corner office on the 45th floor of Carter Industries Tower in downtown Chicago. The skyline stretched before him like a kingdom he had built with his own hands. At 38 years old, he was one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country. His technology company had revolutionized cloud security systems. Fortune 500 companies paid millions for his software. The office was sleek and modern. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lake Michigan. The furniture was Italian leather. Everything spoke of success, power, and achievement. But Daniel's greatest achievement, he believed, was his marriage to Rebecca. They had met 7 years ago at a charity gala in downtown Chicago. She was a marketing executive at a mid-sized firm, beautiful, ambitious, and charming. Her smile could light up a room. Her laugh made everyone around her feel special. Daniel had been immediately attracted to her, not just her beauty but her intelligence. She could discuss business strategy, market trends, and technology with ease. She seemed genuinely interested in his work, his dreams, his vision for the future. Within 6 months, they were married, in a lavish ceremony at the Four Seasons. Within 2 years, she had left her job to focus on supporting his vision and managing their household. Daniel loved coming home to her. She always had dinner ready, always asked about his day, always made him feel like the most important man in the world. After 12-hour workdays building his empire, Rebecca was his peace, his refuge, his home. His best friend James had introduced them. James Morrison, his college roommate from Stanford, his business partner, the man who owned 30% of Carter Industries. They had started the company together 10 years ago in a small garage, working 18-hour days on energy drinks and determination. "You found a good one," James always said about Rebecca. "Rebecca's perfect for you, man. She balances you out." Daniel believed him completely. But recently, things had changed. Small things at first, then bigger things that couldn't be ignored. Rebecca started going to the gym more often, not just 3 times a week, but every single day. Sometimes twice a day. She bought new clothes constantly, expensive designer pieces that filled their walk-in closet. She got her hair done weekly at the most expensive salon in Chicago. New perfumes appeared on her dresser, brands Daniel had never seen before. When Daniel complimented her, she barely smiled. "I'm just taking care of myself," she would say dismissively. "A woman needs to maintain her appearance." "You've always been beautiful," Daniel would reply. She would just shrug and turn away. Then came the late nights, board meetings that ran until 10, charity events that lasted until midnight, dinner with potential investors that somehow never included Daniel. "You're too busy anyway," Rebecca would say when he asked to join her. "I'm handling the social side of the business. You focus on the technical side. That's what you're good at." It made sense. Daniel was more comfortable with code and security protocols than small talk at fancy restaurants. But something felt wrong. Something felt off. His wife was pulling away from him, and he didn't know why. Then, 2 months ago, Daniel's CFO brought him disturbing news. Martha Chen had been with Carter Industries for 8 years. She was thorough, honest, and fiercely loyal. When she asked for a private meeting, Daniel knew something serious was happening. "Sir, there are irregularities in our accounts," Martha said, spreading files across his massive oak desk. "Someone with high-level access has been transferring small amounts. Nothing huge individually, but it adds up. Almost $2 million over 6 months. Daniel's blood went cold. He set down his coffee cup carefully. $2 million? Yes, sir. The transfers are sophisticated, hidden in legitimate transactions, buried in expense reports. Someone knows our system very well. Who has this level of access? Martha hesitated. She adjusted her glasses nervously. Only 5 people in the company have the authorization to move money like this. You, me, Mr. Morrison, and 2 senior executives, Michael Torres and Linda Washington. Daniel leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. Have you investigated all of them? Yes, sir. The transfers are covered well, but they all happen on days when you're traveling, and they're authorized using your wife's computer credentials. The room seemed to tilt. Rebecca? Mrs. Carter has an office here. She has access to certain systems because of her position. Daniel had given Rebecca a symbolic position as director of special projects 2 years ago. She rarely came to the office, maybe once or twice a month, but she had her own office on the executive floor, her own computer, her own access codes. My wife doesn't know how to move money around, Daniel said slowly. She barely understands our business model. Unless someone is helping her, Martha replied quietly. Someone who knows our systems inside and out. Daniel spent the next week investigating quietly. He worked late into the night, reviewing logs, checking timestamps, tracing digital footprints. What he discovered made his stomach turn. Confidential files had been accessed from Rebecca's computer and sent to their biggest competitor, TechShield Corporation. Security protocols, client lists, proprietary algorithms. Everything that made Carter Industries valuable was being leaked to their enemies. But Rebecca barely understood technology. She couldn't have done this alone. She didn't have the knowledge or the skills. Someone was using her. Or worse, she was working with someone who did have the knowledge. The only person who fit that description was James Morrison, his best friend, his brother in everything but blood. Daniel didn't want to believe it. He couldn't believe it, but the evidence was pointing in that direction. That's when Daniel decided to disappear. He called a family friend, George Miller, who ran a private investigation firm. George had helped Daniel's father 20 years ago when someone was stealing from the family construction business. They met at a small diner on the south side of Chicago, away from Daniel's usual haunts. I need to see what's really happening in my company, Daniel told him, stirring his coffee without drinking it. But I can't do it as the CEO. Everyone performs when I'm watching. Everyone is on their best behavior when the boss is around. George nodded slowly. He was in his 60s, gray-haired, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. You want to go undercover? Yes, as a cleaner. Night shift maintenance. No one pays attention to cleaning staff. They're invisible. That's risky, Daniel. If anyone recognizes you, they won't. I'll disguise myself, change my appearance completely. I just need 2 weeks to observe. 2 weeks to see what really happens when people think I'm not watching. George was quiet for a moment. This is about your wife, isn't it? Daniel's jaw tightened. It's about finding the truth. And what if the truth destroys you? Then at least I'll know. George arranged everything. He created a fake identity, David Cruz, a new night janitor hired through a temp agency. The paperwork was perfect. Background checks would show a clean record. Nothing would trace back to Daniel Carter. With colored contact lenses that changed his blue eyes to brown, a fake mustache, thick glasses, and a different posture, Daniel transformed completely. He practiced walking differently, hunched and slower. He changed his voice, adopting a slight accent. He even roughened his hands with sandpaper to look like a man who did manual labor. The night before his first shift, Daniel told Rebecca he was flying to Singapore for emergency meetings. A major client was threatening to leave. He would be gone for 2 weeks, maybe 3. 2 weeks? Rebecca asked, barely looking up from her phone. She was lying on their bed, scrolling through social media. Major client issues. I'm sorry, honey. I know it's last minute. She shrugged. It's fine. I have a lot going on anyway. That charity auction is next week, and I'm organizing the spring gala for the Children's Hospital. Daniel noticed she smiled as she said it. Not a sad smile because he was leaving, a pleased smile, like his absence was exactly what she wanted. That night, he lay awake beside her, wondering if the woman he married still existed, or if she had ever existed at all. The next morning, Daniel kissed Rebecca goodbye. She barely looked up from her breakfast. He drove to the airport, parked in long-term parking, then took an Uber to a small hotel across town. The room was modest, nothing like his mansion in Lake Forest, but it would be his home for the next 2 weeks. That evening, he reported for his first shift as a janitor at his own company. The night supervisor, a tired-looking man named Rodriguez, showed him around. You'll start on floors 30 through 45, Rodriguez explained. Empty trash, vacuum, clean bathrooms, mop floors. Basic stuff. Just stay out of people's way if they're working late. Yes, sir, Daniel replied in his practiced accent. Rodriguez looked at him. You new to Chicago? Yes, sir. Just moved from Texas. Need work. Well, work hard and you'll be fine. This is a good company. They treat people right. Daniel almost laughed. If only Rodriguez knew who he was talking to. The first 3 nights were quiet. Daniel cleaned offices, emptied trash cans, mopped floors. He observed his employees working late. Most were dedicated, focused, doing honest work. It made him proud. But he noticed his wife's office lights stayed on late every night, and James Morrison's car was always in the parking garage long after everyone else had left. On the 4th night, Daniel was cleaning near the executive floor when he heard voices in the conference room. It was almost 11 o'clock. He recognized the voices immediately, Rebecca and James. Daniel's heart started pounding. He pushed his cart closer, pretending to clean the hallway outside the conference room. The door was slightly open. He'll be in Singapore for 2 weeks, Rebecca said. Her voice was cold, businesslike. Nothing like the warm tone she used with Daniel at home. That gives us time to move the rest of the money. Are you sure he doesn't suspect anything? James asked. Daniel? Please. He's so focused on his precious company and his precious code, he doesn't notice anything else. I could rob him blind and he'd never see it coming. Daniel's hand froze on his mop. He felt like someone had punched him in the chest. The last transfer went through clean, James continued. Another 300,000. By the time he gets back, we'll have moved almost 3 million total. The offshore accounts are ready. And TechShield? Rebecca asked. They've confirmed the deal. Once we give them the new security protocols Daniel's been developing, they'll pay us 5 million. Then we execute the final phase. Rebecca laughed. It was a harsh sound, nothing like her usual gentle laugh. I still can't believe he gave me access to everything. He trusts me completely. What a fool. That's because you're good at playing the devoted wife, James said. Daniel could hear the smile in his voice. It wasn't always an act, Rebecca said quietly. In the beginning, I did love him, or I thought I did. But then I realized something. Why be married to money when you can have the money yourself? Why be the CEO's wife when you can be rich and free? And with me, James added. Yes, and with you. Daniel leaned against the wall, his legs suddenly weak. His heart was racing so fast he thought it might explode. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. When do we tell him about us? James asked. Daniel heard movement. He peeked around the corner carefully and saw them. His wife and his best friend, wrapped in each other's arms, kissing passionately. The mop slipped from Daniel's hands and clattered on the floor. They broke apart, looking toward the hallway. Daniel quickly grabbed his mop and pushed his cart away, head down, shoulders hunched. Just the janitor, he heard Rebecca say dismissively. They're like furniture. They don't matter. Daniel kept walking, his vision blurred with tears he refused to let fall. Not yet. Not where anyone could see. He made it to the men's bathroom on the 40th floor and locked himself in a stall. There, alone, he finally let himself feel it. The betrayal, the pain, the complete destruction of everything he believed in. His wife, his best friend, the two people he trusted most in the world had been plotting against him for who knows how long. After 15 minutes, Daniel pulled himself together. He washed his face, looked at himself in the mirror. The disguise stared back at him. David Cruz, the janitor. Invisible, insignificant. But David Cruz could go places Daniel Carter couldn't, could hear things Daniel Carter would never be told. He dried his face and went back to work. Over the next week, Daniel documented everything. George Miller provided him with a tiny camera hidden in his uniform pocket and a recording device disguised as a pen. Daniel wore them every shift. He recorded conversations, photographed documents left carelessly on desks, traced the money transfers through the access logs. Every piece of evidence was sent securely to George's office. He discovered the full scope of their betrayal, and it was worse than he imagined. Rebecca and James had been having an affair for almost 2 years. It started 6 months after Rebecca quit her job. James had always wanted her, even before Daniel married her. He had introduced them, hoping to stay close to her, but Daniel had won her heart, or so Daniel thought. The affair began at a company retreat in Napa Valley. Daniel had been in meetings all day. Rebecca was bored. James offered to show her the vineyard. One thing led to another. From there, it escalated. Secret hotel rooms, lunch meetings that lasted 3 hours, weekend trips when Daniel was traveling. Together, they had been systematically stealing from Carter Industries. It started small. 5,000 here, 10,000 there. Hidden in expense reports, buried in consulting fees to fake companies they had set up. Then it grew bolder. Larger transfers, offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, Swiss bank accounts under false names. They had sold company secrets to TechShield Corporation, Daniel's biggest competitor. Client lists, security protocols, research and development plans. Everything Daniel had spent 10 years building. But worse, they were planning something bigger. On his 10th night undercover, Daniel found documents in James's office. He was supposed to be cleaning, but James and Rebecca had left for the night. The office was empty. Inside James's desk drawer, hidden under files, was a folder marked Project Takeover. Daniel photographed every page. It was a complete plan for a hostile takeover of Carter Industries. James was working with TechShield Corporation and 3 investment firms to buy out smaller shareholders. They planned to force a board vote and remove Daniel as CEO. With Rebecca's testimony about Daniel's obsession with work, his emotional abuse, and his neglect of his marriage, they would paint him as unfit to lead. The board would vote him out. James would become CEO, and together, James and Rebecca would control everything Daniel had built, his company, his money, his life's work. The takeover was scheduled to execute the day after Daniel returned from his fake Singapore trip. In 4 days, they had timed it perfectly. Daniel sat in the empty office, reading through the documents, and something inside him broke. The Daniel Carter who trusted people, who believed in friendship and love and loyalty. That man died in that moment. What remained was harder, colder, angrier, but also smarter. They wanted to destroy him. He would destroy them first. The next morning, Daniel called George Miller and his lawyer, Patricia Hayes. They met at George's office at 6 in the morning. "I have everything I need," Daniel said, spreading out photos, recordings, documents across George's desk. "Now here's what we're going to do." Patricia listened to the recordings, her face getting harder with each conversation. "This is more than enough for criminal charges: embezzlement, corporate espionage, fraud, conspiracy. I want them prosecuted to the full extent of the law," Daniel said. His voice was ice. "No deals, no mercy." "What about the board?" George asked. "The takeover attempt." Daniel smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I'm going to beat them at their own game. But first, I have one more night as a janitor. On Daniel's last night undercover, he was cleaning the executive floor when Rebecca and James appeared together again. It was late, past midnight. The building was empty except for security and cleaning staff. They thought they were alone. They went into Daniel's office, his office. Daniel watched through the glass wall as James sat in his chair, put his feet up on his desk like he owned it. "This will all be mine soon," James said, gesturing around the room. "I've been waiting for this for 10 years, standing in his shadow, being the number 2. Finally, I'll be the CEO. Finally, I'll have everything." Rebecca sat on the edge of the desk. "Ours. Don't forget our agreement. We're partners." "Of course, 50-50. You get Daniel's money in the divorce. I get control of the company. We both win." "I almost feel bad," Rebecca said, though she was smiling. "He really loved me, you know. He would have done anything for me." "He was a fool. He always trusted too easily. That's why he'll never see this coming. He's probably in Singapore right now, working himself to death, completely clueless." They laughed together. The sound echoed through the empty office. Daniel turned away from the window. He had seen enough, heard enough, recorded enough. Tomorrow, everything would change. The next evening, Daniel returned to his mansion in Lake Forest. He had showered at the hotel, removed his disguise, put on his regular clothes. Daniel Carter, CEO, was back. He didn't call ahead. He just walked in through the front door. Rebecca was in the living room, on her phone, texting someone. She jumped when she saw him, her face going pale for just a second before she recovered. "Daniel, you're early. I thought your flight landed at 6. "Change of plans. We finished early. The client was actually very reasonable." She composed herself quickly, walking over to kiss him. Her lips touched his cheek. Daniel let her, studying her face. How had he missed the coldness in her eyes? How had he missed the calculation behind every smile? "How was Singapore?" she asked sweetly. "Enlightening," Daniel replied. "Very enlightening." That night, Rebecca acted perfectly normal. She made dinner, his favorite, grilled salmon with asparagus. She asked about his trip, talked about her week, mentioned the charity auction that had gone well. The loving wife performance was flawless. Daniel played along. He smiled, nodded, told stories about Singapore that he had researched online. He pretended everything was fine. But inside, he was preparing for war. The next morning, Daniel arrived at Carter Industries at 7 o'clock. His assistant Jenny looked surprised to see him so early. "Sir, you're not supposed to be here until noon. The board meeting isn't until 2. "The board meeting has been rescheduled," Daniel said calmly. "Emergency session. 9 o'clock. All board members, all senior executives, everyone required, no exceptions." Jenny nodded, confused but efficient. "Yes, sir. I'll send out the notices immediately." Daniel walked into his office, the same office where, just 12 hours ago, James had sat in his chair talking about taking everything from him. He sat down and opened his laptop. Everything was ready. The evidence was organized. The lawyers were prepared. The police had been briefed. At 8:30, Martha Chen appeared at his door. "Sir, what's going on?" "You'll see soon, Martha. Thank you for bringing the financial irregularities to my attention. Your honesty is about to save this company." At 8:45, James arrived. He looked surprised to see Daniel. "Daniel, you're back early. I thought the board meeting was this afternoon. I had prepared—" "Sit down, James." Something in Daniel's voice made James freeze. The color drained slightly from his face, but he recovered quickly, forcing a smile. "Is something wrong?" "Sit down." James sat slowly in one of the chairs facing Daniel's desk. Before he could say anything else, security appeared at the door with Patricia Hayes and 2 police officers in uniform. James's face went completely white. "What's going on?" Rebecca appeared moments later, slightly out of breath. She had been working out, dressed in expensive gym clothes. "Daniel, what's happening?" "Jenny called and said it was an emergency. Why are the police here?" Daniel stood slowly. He pressed a button on his desk and the large screen on his wall came to life. Video footage began playing. Rebecca and James in the conference room, their voices crystal clear. He'll be in Singapore for 2 weeks. That gives us time to move the rest of the money. Are you sure he doesn't suspect anything? Daniel, please. He's so focused on his precious company, he doesn't notice anything else. As the video continued, showing their conversations about stealing money, about the offshore accounts, about selling company secrets, the color drained from both their faces. The video shifted to show them kissing in Rebecca's office, in James's car in the parking garage, at a luxury hotel downtown. Timestamps showed dates going back 2 years. How? Rebecca whispered. Her hand was over her mouth. How did you? Daniel pulled off his suit jacket. Underneath, he wore a blue janitor's uniform shirt. You said the cleaners are invisible, Daniel said quietly. You were right. They see everything. They hear everything. And no one pays attention to them because they're just furniture. They don't matter. James jumped up from his chair. This is illegal. You can't record people without... In my own company? Daniel's voice was cold steel. In spaces where security monitoring is clearly posted, where every employee signs consent forms. Try again, James. Patricia stepped forward. She was carrying a briefcase full of documents. Mr. Morrison, Mrs. Carter, you're both under investigation for embezzlement, corporate espionage, fraud, conspiracy, and theft of intellectual property. These officers are here to escort you both out of the building. This is ridiculous, Rebecca shouted. Her composure cracked completely. Daniel, you can't do this to me. I'm your wife. Not for long, Daniel said, his voice completely flat. Divorce papers are being filed this morning. The prenup is ironclad, Rebecca. You signed it. You agreed that in cases of infidelity or criminal activity, you get nothing, not $1. You can't prove... Daniel pressed another button. More footage played. Rebecca and James discussing their affair, planning their future together, laughing about how stupid Daniel was, how easy it was to fool him. The footage showed them at romantic dinners, at the Four Seasons Hotel, walking on the beach in California during a business trip Rebecca had claimed to take alone. Timestamps, dates, locations, everything documented. Rebecca started crying. Mascara ran down her face. Daniel, please. I made a mistake. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. I'll do anything. Work it out? Daniel's voice rose for the first time. Years of hurt and betrayal poured out. You've been stealing from me for months. You've been sleeping with my best friend for 2 years. You were planning to destroy everything I built. I loved you once, Rebecca sobbed. No, you didn't. You loved my money. You loved the lifestyle. You loved what I could give you. But you never loved me. Because if you had, you couldn't have done this. The police officers moved forward. Sir, ma'am, you need to come with us for questioning. As they led Rebecca toward the door, she turned back. You'll regret this, Daniel. I'll fight you. I'll tell everyone you're a monster. You'll lose, Daniel said quietly. You already have. Every word you just said was recorded. Every threat. It will all be used against you in court. James was silent as they put handcuffs on him. He looked at Daniel one last time. I'm sorry, he whispered. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. As the police led them both away, the office fell silent. The board members started arriving. Daniel addressed them calmly, professionally. He showed them the evidence of the theft, the corporate espionage, the attempted takeover. He explained how he had uncovered it. The board was stunned, but they were also grateful. Daniel had saved the company from destruction. By noon, the story had hit the news. Billionaire CEO goes undercover as janitor to catch wife and business partner in massive fraud scheme. Daniel's phone rang constantly. Interview requests, support from other CEOs, messages from people he hadn't spoken to in years. He ignored them all. That night, Daniel sat alone in his massive house, the same house he had bought for Rebecca, the same rooms where she had smiled at him while planning his destruction, the same bed where she had lain beside him while loving another man. He poured himself a scotch and stared at his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. Everything he had built felt empty now. His wife was a lie. His best friend was a traitor. His marriage was destroyed. His trust was shattered. He had saved his company, but he had lost everything else. 3 months later, the trials began. Rebecca and James were both facing serious criminal charges. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, financial records, recorded conversations, email trails. Everything was documented. They tried to make deals. Rebecca's lawyer claimed she was manipulated by James. James's lawyer claimed Rebecca was the mastermind. The prosecutors weren't interested, and Daniel refused to show any mercy. "They wanted to destroy me," he told Patricia. "Let them face the full consequences of their choices." James was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for embezzlement and corporate espionage. His 30% stake in Carter Industries was seized and sold to pay restitution. Everything he had worked for was gone. Rebecca faced fraud charges and conspiracy. Her lawyer tried to paint her as a victim, a wife neglected by a workaholic husband who fell into the wrong relationship. But the footage of her coldly planning Daniel's downfall, laughing about fooling him, discussing how to maximize the money she could steal, it proved otherwise. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison. The judge showed no sympathy. At her sentencing, she stared at Daniel across the courtroom. No tears this time. No begging. Just cold hatred in her eyes. "I hope you're happy," she said. "I hope destroying me was worth it." "I didn't destroy you, Rebecca," Daniel replied calmly. "You destroyed yourself. I just made sure you faced the consequences. I'll never forgive you for this. I don't need your forgiveness. I just need you out of my life." After it was all over, Daniel sat with George Miller in a quiet restaurant on the north side of Chicago. "You did the right thing," George said, cutting into his steak. "Then why does it feel so wrong?" Daniel asked. He hadn't touched his food. "Because you loved her. Because you trusted him. Those feelings don't go away just because they betrayed you. You'll carry this pain for a while. That's normal." Daniel nodded slowly. "What will you do now?" George asked. "Rebuild," Daniel said. "The company is secure. My reputation actually improved from this. Turns out people respect a CEO who goes undercover to protect his business. But personally, I don't know how to rebuild that. Start small. Trust in small ways. Let people earn it gradually. I don't know if I can trust anyone again." "That's the real damage they did," George said. "They didn't just steal your money. They stole your ability to believe in people." 6 months after the trial, Daniel stood in his office looking out at the Chicago skyline. Carter Industries was stronger than ever. The scandal had actually brought positive attention. Other companies wanted to work with someone who took security and loyalty so seriously. Profits were up. New contracts were signed. The company was thriving. But Daniel himself had changed fundamentally. He was harder now, more careful. He questioned everything. He trusted no one completely. Every employee, every business partner, every friendly gesture was analyzed for hidden motives. He was successful, but he was alone. Martha Chen, his CFO, knocked on his door. "Sir, the new security protocols are ready for your review." "Thank you, Martha. Just leave them on my desk." She hesitated at the door. "Sir, can I say something personal?" "Of course." "What Rebecca and James did was terrible, unforgivable. But don't let them turn you into someone you're not. You're still a good man underneath all this armor you're wearing. Don't let their betrayal change who you are at your core." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "What if it already has?" "Then fight to get yourself back. Because the Daniel Carter who built this company, who believed in people, who gave chances, that man was worth knowing. Don't let them kill him." She left quietly. Daniel looked at a photo on his desk. It was from his college days. Him and James, arms around each other at graduation, laughing at some joke he couldn't remember now. Brothers by choice, they had called themselves. He had trusted the wrong people. But Martha was right. That didn't mean everyone was untrustworthy. Slowly, carefully, Daniel began to rebuild. Not just his business, but his ability to believe in people again. It wasn't easy. Every step forward felt like a risk. Every new relationship felt dangerous. But he tried. 1 year after everything fell apart, Daniel attended a charity event for underprivileged youth. He went alone, as he always did now. He had turned down several offers to be set up on dates. He wasn't ready. Maybe he never would be. At the event, he met Sarah Chen, a nonprofit director working with kids from poor neighborhoods. She was intelligent, passionate about her work, and completely uninterested in his money. "I don't date billionaires," she told him bluntly when he asked her to dinner after they had talked for an hour. "Why not?" Daniel asked, genuinely curious. "Because they usually think money solves everything. I work with kids who need more than money. They need someone who actually cares, someone who shows up. Most wealthy people I've met just write checks and feel good about themselves." Daniel smiled. It was the first genuine smile he'd felt in months. "What if I told you I care about more than money?" "I'd say prove it. Words are easy. Actions matter." "Fair enough. How can I prove it?" She studied him carefully. "Volunteer at my nonprofit. Not for publicity, not for a tax write-off. Actually show up and help these kids. If you can do that for 3 months without making it about you, then maybe I'll have dinner with you." Daniel was surprised. No one had challenged him like this in years. "Deal." And he did. Over the next 3 months, Daniel volunteered at Sarah's nonprofit every Saturday. He mentored young entrepreneurs from poor backgrounds. He taught coding classes to teenagers. He used his skills and knowledge to genuinely help, not to impress Sarah or anyone else. The kids didn't know he was a billionaire. To them, he was just Mr. Carter, the guy who taught them about business and technology. Sarah watched him carefully. She knew about his divorce, about the betrayal, about everything. It had been in the news. But she saw something else too. She saw a man trying to rebuild himself. "You're different from other wealthy men I've met," she told him one evening after the kids had gone home. "How?" Daniel asked. They were cleaning up the classroom together. "You actually listen. You actually care. You don't just throw money at problems and walk away. You stick around. You invest time, not just money." Daniel thought about Rebecca, about James, about everything he had lost. "I learned the hard way that money doesn't buy loyalty or love, and that the people who matter most are often the ones you least expect." Sarah smiled. "Like a CEO disguised as a janitor?" Daniel laughed. It was genuine, from his chest. It felt good. Exactly like that. 3 months turned into 6. Daniel and Sarah's friendship grew into something more. She saw him at his worst, heard about his fears and his pain. She never judged him, never pressured him, just walked beside him as he healed. "I don't know if I can trust again," Daniel confessed one night over dinner. "Then don't trust me yet," Sarah replied simply. "Let me earn it. Let me show you through my actions that I'm here for you, not for what you can give me." And she did. Day by day, week by week, Sarah proved herself. Not through grand gestures, but through consistent, genuine care. 2 years after his world had collapsed, Daniel Carter stood in a small community center, watching kids he had mentored present their business plans to a panel of local entrepreneurs. Sarah stood beside him, her hand in his. "You've built something real here," she said softly. "We've built something real," Daniel corrected. "I couldn't have done this without you." She looked up at him. "You're not the same man you were 2 years ago." "No," Daniel agreed. "That man was too trusting, too naive. He believed people at their word without watching their actions." "But you're not bitter either," Sarah continued. "You didn't let them destroy your ability to care. That takes real strength." Daniel watched the kids present their dreams. A bakery business, a tech startup, a landscaping company. These young people from nothing building something real. "I learned something being invisible," Daniel said quietly. "People's true character shows when they think no one important is watching. Rebecca and James showed me exactly who they were when they thought I couldn't see them. But so did people like Martha, like George, like these kids, like you." "What did I show you?" Sarah asked. "That not everyone wants something from me. That some people value character over money. That maybe, just maybe, I can trust again. Not blindly like before, but carefully, watching actions, not words." Sarah squeezed his hand. "I'm proud of you, for surviving, for not becoming bitter, for opening yourself up again even though it terrifies you." "It does terrify me," Daniel admitted. Every day. But you make it worth the risk. As the presentations ended and parents arrived to pick up their kids, Daniel found himself surrounded by grateful families. Parents thanking him for believing in their children. Kids showing him their progress, their plans, their dreams. This was wealth, he realized. Not the number in his bank account. These connections, these real relationships built on mutual respect and genuine care. Later that evening, Daniel drove Sarah home. They sat in his car outside her modest apartment building. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said. "Anything. Do you still think about them? Rebecca and James?" Daniel was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes. Mostly I think about the man I was before. How blind I was. How I mistook performance for authenticity. You weren't blind. You were trusting. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes," Sarah said firmly. "Being trusting means you believe in people's potential for good. Being blind means you ignore evidence of bad. You weren't ignoring anything. They were actively deceiving you. That's not your fault." Daniel nodded slowly. "I needed to hear that. Do you hate them?" "I did. For months I burned with it. But hatred is exhausting, Sarah. Now I just feel sad. Sad that they were so empty inside they had to destroy something real. Sad that I wasted years on people who never valued me. But mostly, I'm grateful. Grateful? Because if they hadn't betrayed me, I would still be living that lie. I would still be married to a woman who never loved me, working beside a man who was planning my destruction. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is also the best thing. It forces you to see truth." Sarah leaned over and kissed his cheek gently. "You're going to be okay, Daniel Carter." "I think I already am." 3 years after the betrayal, Daniel stood in a small church on a Saturday afternoon. Sarah walked down the aisle toward him, her smile radiant. No massive wedding, no society guests, just close friends, family, and the kids from the nonprofit who had become like family. Martha Chen was there, beaming. George Miller stood as Daniel's best man. The community they had built together filled the small church with genuine love and support. As Sarah reached him and took his hands, Daniel felt something shift inside him. The last piece of armor fell away. "You're shaking," Sarah whispered. "I'm scared," Daniel admitted quietly. "Of what?" "Of losing this, of being wrong again." Sarah smiled gently. "Then watch my actions, not my words. Watch how I treat you when no one's looking. Watch how I behave when I'm angry or tired or stressed. That's who I really am. And I promise you, Daniel, I will never be anything but real with you." The ceremony was simple but profound. When they said their vows, Daniel meant every word. Not because he was blindly trusting, but because Sarah had earned his trust through 3 years of consistent, genuine love. At the reception, Daniel gave a toast. "I want to thank everyone here for helping me rebuild. 3 years ago, I discovered that the 2 people I trusted most were systematically destroying me. It broke something inside me, but it also freed me to find something real." He looked at Sarah. "I learned that true wealth isn't money. It's not success or status or power. True wealth is knowing that the people in your life love you for who you are, not what you can give them. True wealth is being seen, really seen, by someone who values your character over your bank account." The room applauded. Not the polite golf clap of high society events, but genuine, warm appreciation. Later, as they danced, Sarah asked, "Do you ever wish things had been different? That Rebecca had been real?" Daniel thought carefully. "If Rebecca had been real, I never would have met you. I never would have learned to see people clearly. I would have coasted through life thinking everything was fine while living a comfortable lie. So no, I don't wish things were different. I wish they had been honest sooner so I had wasted less time. But I don't wish for a different ending. This ending, right here, is exactly where I'm supposed to be." 5 years after his world collapsed, Daniel sat in his office at Carter Industries. The company had doubled in size. He had made Forbes's list of most admirable CEOs. But what he was most proud of was the nonprofit he and Sarah had built together. The Carter Chen Foundation now operated in 15 cities, mentoring thousands of young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. They provided not just money, but time, wisdom, and genuine care. Martha knocked on his door. "Sir, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important." "Who is it?" Martha hesitated. "Rebecca Carter. Well, Rebecca Morrison now, I suppose. She just got out on parole." Daniel's stomach tightened. He hadn't seen or spoken to his ex-wife in 5 years. "Send her in." Rebecca walked in slowly. She looked different, thinner, older. The expensive clothes and jewelry were gone, replaced by simple jeans and a plain shirt. Prison had changed her. "Hello, Daniel." "Rebecca." She stood awkwardly. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to see. I needed to talk to you. To apologize. Really apologize, not just say words." Daniel gestured to a chair. She sat. "I've had 5 years to think about what I did," Rebecca said. Her voice was quiet, genuine. 5 years to understand how badly I hurt you, how I destroyed something good because I was selfish and greedy and empty inside. Daniel listened without interrupting. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she continued. "I don't forgive myself. But I needed you to know that I understand now what I lost. Not the money or the lifestyle. I lost a good man who genuinely loved me, and I threw that away for temporary pleasure and greed. There's not a day I don't regret it." "Why are you really here, Rebecca?" Daniel asked. She took a breath. "Because I heard you got married. To Sarah Chen. I looked her up. She's exactly the kind of person you deserved all along. And I wanted you to know that I'm glad. Glad you found real love. Glad you didn't let what James and I did make you bitter and closed off." Daniel was surprised by her sincerity. "Prison changed you." "It had to. I lost everything. Money, freedom, dignity. All I had left was time to think. And I realized that the person I was before was someone I didn't even like. Someone I don't want to be again." "What will you do now?" "Rebuild. Not the glamorous life I had before, just a real life. I got a job at a coffee shop. I'm renting a small apartment. I'm going to therapy twice a week. I'm trying to become someone I can respect." Daniel nodded slowly. "I hope you succeed." Rebecca stood. "That's all I wanted to say. I won't bother you again. I just needed you to know that I'm sorry. Truly sorry. And I'm glad you're happy. You deserve it." As she walked toward the door, Daniel called out, "Rebecca?" She turned. "I forgive you." Her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. That means more than you know." After she left, Daniel sat quietly for a moment. Sarah called, as if sensing he needed her. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Rebecca just came to see me, to apologize." "How do you feel?" "Free," Daniel said. "Completely free. I realized I stopped carrying anger toward her a long time ago. Seeing her now, I just felt nothing. No pain, no anger, no regret. Just peace. That's growth, love. That's healing." That evening, Daniel came home to the brownstone he and Sarah had bought together. It wasn't as large as his Lake Forest mansion, but it was filled with warmth. Photos of their wedding, the kids they mentored, family gatherings, real memories, real love. Sarah was in the kitchen cooking dinner. Daniel wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For being real, for being patient, for showing me what love actually looks like." She turned in his arms and kissed him. "Thank you for not giving up on people, for not letting them make you hard and cynical." As they ate dinner together, talking about their day, their plans, their dreams, Daniel reflected on the journey. He had been destroyed, completely shattered by betrayal. But from those broken pieces, he had built something better, something real. He had learned to see people clearly, to watch actions, not words, to value character over charisma, to build trust slowly through consistent behavior, not blind faith. The CEO who disguised himself as a janitor had learned the most valuable lesson of all, that true success isn't measured by wealth or status, but by the quality of people who stand beside you. Not when you're powerful and useful, but when you're vulnerable and hurting. Rebecca and James had shown him who they really were when they thought he couldn't see. But Martha, George, Sarah, and countless others had shown him something more important. That good people still exist. That love is still real. That trust, while risky, is still worth it. 10 years after that devastating night when he watched his wife and best friend betray him, Daniel Carter stood at a podium addressing a group of young entrepreneurs. His hair had some gray now, lines around his eyes from years of smiling. "The worst day of my life," he told them, "was also the beginning of my best life, because sometimes you have to lose everything you thought mattered to discover what actually does." He looked out at the audience and saw Sarah in the front row, holding their 1-year-old daughter. Beside her sat Martha, George, and dozens of young people they had mentored who had gone on to build successful businesses and lives. "Success isn't about how much you make or how high you climb," Daniel continued. "It's about who you become in the process. Are you someone worth knowing when the power and money are stripped away? Are you kind when no one important is watching? Are you honest when lying would be easier? That's the measure of real success." After the speech, as Daniel held his daughter and stood beside his wife, surrounded by people who genuinely loved him, he realized something profound. He had thought disguising himself as a janitor was about catching thieves, but really, it was about seeing clearly, about understanding that character is revealed not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. Not when people are performing, but when they think no one is watching. And the most important discovery wasn't what he found about Rebecca and James. It was what he learned about himself, that he was stronger than he knew, that he could survive betrayal and still choose love, that he could be destroyed and still rebuild something beautiful. The CEO who became invisible to see the truth had learned to see himself clearly too. And that, more than any amount of money or success, was the real treasure. As they drove home that evening, Sarah asked, "Any regrets?" Daniel thought about everything: the pain, the betrayal, the long journey back to trust and love. "Not one," he said honestly, "because every painful step led me exactly where I needed to be." And he meant it.